And start now.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Mental Health in Your Neighborhood, and welcome to Pastor Bruce Wall as my co-host. Good morning, Pastor.
Good morning, Sister Louise. How are you today?
I'm fine because the Zoom is working. You plugged it in for me, and I'm able to talk to you on the broadcast. I'm pleased.
It's great to be back. I just don't know what I will do with myself if I don't have an opportunity to broadcast with you once a week. You know, Renee, she broadcasts with a bishop. His name is Bishop Harold Branch. And if he doesn't come in to broadcast because he can't get in, Renee goes into her office and she goes into a depression. I can't get her out of the office. So it's important for her to broadcast with Bishop Branch. And if you tell me that you have a doctor's appointment, you got to get your car fixed, you got to get your hair done, and you can't do the broadcast, I go into the office with Renee, and I'm so depressed, I don't know what to do. She gives me a Pepsi, I feel better, and so I'm glad that we're broadcasting together today.
Yes, well, Sister Renee does a lot in the church as well, so I appreciate everything she does. But well, I wanted to talk on the broadcast today a little bit about something that has been becoming, I'm becoming more aware of, and that is your preaching and teaching on Sundays in the sanctuary.
Okay.
I have noticed that your preaching is so much more precious and separate from what you used to do when you would occasionally have a funny comment here and there. But now your preaching is so serious. I appreciate that. And it suddenly reminded me of something over 30 years ago when I went to your church and did not know you. I did not know you, but my neighbor took me to the church that you used to go to.
Yeah.
And I remember one day that one Sunday, I walked into the church and I was going upstairs to the balcony to sit. And one of the men looked at me and he said, "Are you in the right place?"
Was that a black man who said that to you?
Yes. He said, "Are you in the right place?" And I said, "Yes, I am. I am in the right place." So I kept going until we found 2 seats together and we sat down because the seats were always all taken.
Right.
So then when another time, a different time, excuse me, I came in and I went downstairs. I left the balcony. I went out to the sidewalk and I came back in the basement area of the same church.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I tripped and I was falling forward. And a man was behind me and he put his hands on my shoulders.
Yeah.
He grabbed my 2 shoulders and he held me so that I did not fall forward on my face.
And he said to you, I know what he said to you. You know, I'm going to tell you what he said. He said, "Are you single?" Is that what he said?
Are you what?
Are you single?
No, he didn't say that.
I'm just checking.
He didn't say that. As a matter of fact, what he did was once he had me stationary.
Yeah.
I was about to turn around and say thank you, but he left. He didn't want me to see who he was.
Oh,
But I thought that was interesting that he saved me from falling flat on my face in
yeah,
his church.
yeah,
And he turned around quickly and left after he saved me. But I thought those two things were very interesting in terms of my going to Reverend Haynes' church.
yeah. And was I there when you came?
You were leading the choir, but I didn't really know you.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't
And
speak to you. I didn't go to you. I didn't speak to you. I was with my neighbor friend who had brought me there several times because she wanted me to hear someone who was speaking the Bible. And
yeah,
that was very important to me because I was raised a Catholic and I never studied the Bible.
yeah,
I never opened the book of the Bible when I was a Catholic. And I didn't know what to read, where to read it, how to read it until
yeah,
I went to a Baptist church.
yeah, yeah. Well,
So that
um,
was very important to me. So here's something 30, maybe 34 years later
yeah,
that happened
yeah.
that I have to share with you. Are you
Well,
ready for this one?
yes, I'm there. This is mental health in your neighborhood, so I'm getting myself mentally ready. Go ahead.
Okay. So one day I was being delivered to our church, your church and
Yeah,
my church,
yeah,
Global Ministries Christian Church in Dorchester. And I was being delivered there, and there was another passenger in the vehicle, and she was sitting in the back seat, and she hadn't said a single word to me the whole time we drove there.
okay.
But she saw you, and she said, "That's Bruce Wall." And I said, "Yes, that is Bruce Wall. That's my pastor." And she said, "That's your pastor?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "How can it be your pastor?" I said, "This is my church." And she said, "Oh my God, how long have you been going here?" And I said, 30 years. I have been coming to this church with that pastor for 30 years. And she said, "Oh my God." And I said, "Would you like to speak with him?" And she said, "No, no, no, I better go. Driver, just leave the building. Just go away, go away." So she didn't want to speak with you because of what she thought about me going to our church.
Uh, is that the first time she was in the car with you?
Yes, first time I've ever seen her. And I was really shocked because I mean, it was my turn to be dropped off first before her. I was picked up first, she
Yeah,
was picked up second,
yeah.
then I was dropped off at our church. And she suddenly, when she saw you, she said, "That's Bruce Wall." She was amazed. And I said, "Well, of course it's Bruce Wall. This is our church." And she said, "How long have you been going here?" She thought I had been going there 1 or 2 years.
Right, right.
And I said, "I have been going to this church for 30 years. And she said, "Oh my God, driver, take me away, take me away."
So how what part of the city did she live in?
Mattapan.
Oh, she's Mattapan.
Yeah, not too far away from the church.
Does it look like she was going to her church?
I have no idea where she was going because she didn't speak to me at all while she was a passenger in the car. I
But
was
she went
speaking with the driver.
right, right, right. What are you doing? Giving the driver directions?
No, I was just speaking with the driver about where he came from originally.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, now that I'm connected to the ride,
Yes.
every single driver that picks me up comes from another country.
Wow.
Every single one that picks me up in Hull takes me where I ask him to take me, which is primarily our church. When they pick me up at the church and take me back, it's a different driver. And that different driver also came from another country, like Haiti or the Bahamas or Africa. It's amazing.
Is it getting better, the ride?
The ride is getting better because I'm beginning to understand the proper way of calling and asking to be picked up at a certain time, to arrive at a certain time. I have to put those 2 times in. And then when I want to be picked up to come home, I ask to be picked up to be taken home. And I'm not worried about getting home quickly. That's not a problem for me. So
Right.
I don't have to give a second time for that.
So when the spring comes and the summer comes, if you wanted to sit out on that porch or sit outside, when it's warm, waiting for the ride, that also is something that you could do. You can't do it now because it's too cold, but
Okay. Mm.
right.
Mm.
And but you can't really wait on that porch because I think it's too cold to be on that porch.
Wait, which porch are you talking about?
The front porch at the church when it's freezing.
At the church.
Yeah. Yeah,
This is true.
you can't wait there for the ride. You have to be inside either the sanctuary or
Exactly.
somewhere
And the
else.
good thing is if my timing is correct, the driver comes to the door for me.
Okay, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
How do you know he's outside?
Because if I haven't noticed him through the window of the church, one of my sisters or brothers has noticed it and
Okay.
given me a message.
And does he know he can drive through um the church, drive through what do we call it? The canopy, under the canopy?
Yes, yes, I've been teaching them to drive that way so that I can use the ramp.
Good. And is there somebody in the ride when they pick you up to take you home, or are you by yourself?
Usually by myself going home,
Okay. Well, that's
and
good. I'm
by
glad it's
myself
working.
and also by myself getting picked up in the morning, which is at 6:45 a.m.
Yeah. Except for this Sunday when you had 2 people, right?
Yeah, yes, there were 2 people. One was taken to his church in Weymouth, and the other one was just a passenger until I was dropped off.
So there were 3 of you in the van.
Yes, it wasn't a van, it was just an automobile. It was automobile size.
So it
But
didn't have the yellow on the side. It didn't say the ride. It was just a regular minivan or something.
yeah, it had the painted yellow line. But the strange thing is that twice going home,
Yeah,
just going home from Dorchester to Hull,
yeah.
I was picked up by the bus. The bus,
What do you mean you were picked up by the bus?
the huge bus, the ride bus picked me up.
Uh, but that's not like a big bus,
Yes, it was a big bus. Yeah.
like the regular buses that you take on the street.
Yeah. Huge. It was huge. Well, I don't know how many seats there were because they were folded up on the inside.
Yeah. So why do you think they had something like that for you?
I think it has to do with the availability of the driver.
Ooh. So you were on that big bus all by yourself?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
But I was
That's a,
taken home. It was fine. The problem was I wasn't able to speak to the driver because he was further away from me in the bus.
Right. Wow. Have you reported to your son about the ride and how it's working?
I'm going to be doing that today because he's visiting me today.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
good. Well, you know, we actually had a horrific shooting in the city of the 13-year-old young boy from Norwood, Mass, and who was visiting his grandmother.
Oh, yes,
And
the
yeah,
13-year-old.
yeah, that
That
was
was horrible.
terrible, terrible.
Horrible. He was such a handsome young man, and he was just visiting his grandparents and went out for a walk at that Sunday morning.
Right, right. And what's bad about it is his poor grandmother. How does she live with having that on her heart? That Tyler Lawrence is his name, Tyler. How did she live with that in her heart, knowing that he was in her care
Right.
during that? I mean, that's the worst nightmare of any grandmother, right?
It would be horrible if somebody came to visit me and that happened when they came to visit me.
Yeah.
Oh, it was terrible. But the police were able to arrest the man who did the shooting.
Right. They have somebody, and we're all gonna have to wait until this whole thing plays out. It's we have to wait until it plays out to make sure that they do have the right person, because sometimes when they make this rush to arrest somebody, it doesn't always pan out being the person that actually committed the offense, and we're seeing that over and over again. So I'm just hoping that they'll take their time and
Mm,
making sure that this is the person who committed the crime. That's
yes.
really important. So
Yeah.
that whole experience brought back to my memory when we all dealt with the shooting of young Stephen Odom of Kim and Odom and her husband. It was I believe their son was 13 when he was shot. He was innocent himself. He was on his way home. I think he was on his way home, but we all, along with the family, lived through that experience. That was horrific.
It's just hard to understand that at this date, 2023, when there are so many wonderful things available to us now, and we've passed through the terrible condition of the flu in a certain case, and these terrible things are happening to young people in our community.
Yeah,
I don't find that acceptable in any way. And I know, as talking about mental health, even though I don't know any of these people personally, I am so offended and so pained by the fact that somebody 13 years old was shot and killed.
right.
That's horrendous, because I have young great grandchildren that age. I couldn't, I don't know how I could tolerate something like that happening to a family member of my own that I was responsible for.
Right, right. Yeah, it's. I just don't know what I would do, how I would tell my children that their child was in my custody and was shot. And again, because we do not know the circumstances, we do not know if the killer was
Mhm.
shooting directly at that child, was shooting at somebody else, and the child was the innocent bystander. Well, we don't know. We're
Right.
not going to know until there is a trial or a confession, and then all that information could come out. But I found it was interesting at one of the press conferences that they had the federal prosecutor as well as the Suffolk County prosecutor, Rachel Rollins and Kevin Hayden. And they were both at the press conference because
Mhm.
there were going to be federal charges. I think that they were going to be drug-related charges, and the murder case was coming from the Suffolk County uh, Kevin Peterson district attorney. And so this person is going to have federal and state charges that if he did commit this, he's going to be put away for an extended period of time. He's
I
going to be off the
know. I
streets.
know. And I've been in the prison for 28 years. I used to go into the prison and provide drug counseling to some lifers in
Yeah,
5 different prisons. And I know what it's like for them to be in prison. And I know that sometimes they are mistreated by other prisoners, mistreated by correctional officers, mistreated by their family who doesn't come to visit them, or doesn't want to know anything about them.
yeah,
And there are some that some of their family members who are in fact doing a lot for them because they're taking care of their children,
yeah,
and they're not going into the prison to visit them because they've got their children with them in their homes, their grandparents and
yeah.
they're caring for those children. So there's all
Right,
different things that have to take place that are going to impact the mental conditions of the grandparents, the parents, the aunts, the uncles. It's amazing.
right. And I haven't read enough to know whether or not Tyler had other brothers and sisters. Because what happens now when the other brothers and sisters want to go visit Nanny? Uh,
Mhm.
uh, the other brothers and sisters' parents going to say, "Oh yeah, go ahead," or the only way that Nanny could visit the grandmother could visit her grandchildren is to actually go to Norwood, where they live,
Right.
and that would be that being around the family at this time.
Mhm.
Again, I don't know whether or not they were people of faith. I don't know anything about that, but it it it, it would be a lot for a person to be around someone who lost their child that way, because that's something that you never think could happen to your child. And you're doing all the right things. I'm
Right.
going to bring my child to the grandparents. I'm going to be over there. The grandparents going to supervise their coming and their going. Uh, all that's lost right now.
I know. It's so sad. And when it's reported on the news, I immediately become identified as a grandparent because I am a grandparent.
Right.
I'm identified as a parent, depending upon the age of the person who is the victim of whomever is killing
Right.
someone.
Right.
So if they're shooting a person in their 50s, that could be a child of mine. But if they're shooting someone in their 30s, it could be a grandchild. And again, going back to the 13-year-old that you mentioned originally,
Yeah.
that would be a great grandchild to me. and I would be heartbroken that
Yeah.
that person was visiting me and was killed while they were visiting me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't know how you actually get over something like that. I don't know if if you're gonna need professional intervention yourself.
Oh, yes,
Because,
it's already being offered to some
yeah,
of the parents who have
right,
lost their children this way.
right. And the fact that this
I
young
can't hear
man,
you. I can't hear you.
the fact that this young man went to school in Norwood, so now they have to offer the counseling to everybody in that school who
Right,
would need it.
right,
So
right.
if your friend lives in Norwood, you don't know anything about the grandmother, that the grandmother lives in Mattapan. You may not even know anything about Mattapan. You just
Right.
know that your friend lives down the street in Norwood, and you feel relatively safe because you may not have
Mhm,
experienced anything like that in Norwood in a long
mhm,
time. And then you find out that your 13-year-old friend is no longer with us. You begin to question, why were they in Mattapan? You don't know the family dynamics. Yesterday, I went to an event for Larry Ellison at the Boston Police Department. And I didn't want to drive from my house down because I was concerned about parking, number one. And I don't want to be driving around in circles trying to find parking, which is difficult by the police station. And so I took an Uber to the Forest Hill train station, and I took the train and came down to police headquarters. When I
mm.
left, somebody asked me where my car was, and I said, I'm taking the train, and please, I want to take the train. I appreciate you offering to give me a ride, but I want to take the train. I said, for me, this is an adventure. Because I haven't been on a train in 2 years, 2 or 3 years. So I got on the train, and then when I came to Forest Hills, I decided to just get out and walk because when's the last time I walked around Forest Hills? I wanted to see the station. I wanted to see the businesses across the street. I wanted to see the quality of the housing on Hyde Park Ave. So I was walking. But
Mm.
when I was on the train, there was a lot of activity on the train, and you've got the children there, and they're loud, and they're doing what they're doing. And I said to myself, if if somebody had assaulted me or stabbed me or did something like that on the train, the first thing that people would say is, "What was he doing on the train?" That would be the first thing. I felt completely safe, but in my mind, I was thinking of different scenarios and things that could happen.
Mhm.
And people was the first thing they would say is, "Why was he on the train?"
I
And,
know because so many people know you and know
yeah,
you have an automobile.
right. So, but I arrived home safely, and again, I enjoyed just hanging out, being on the train. As a matter of fact, I was on the Orange Line, and I didn't know because I haven't been on a train in 2 years. The trains are all brand new. And I know you haven't been anywhere near a train. You're just
Nice,
on the
nice,
right.
nice.
You're just on the MBTA ride, but they are new buses. It looks clean. It smells clean. The
Mm.
signage is nice. I said to myself, "Wow, look at what they've done over here." But you haven't been on a train. When's the last time you were on a train?
Oh, it's been years since I've been on a train, but when I'm a passenger in the car and someone's taking me to my medical appointment,
Right.
oftentimes I am driven right through Forest Hills. So I know exactly what the Forest Hills station looks like.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
know that many, many residential buildings have been
Yeah.
constructed around the station now. That's
Well,
new.
Well,
That's new.
you have the MBTA train and the commuter rail. They run parallel on parallel tracks.
Right.
And but when I was on the train, as you're driving, there's obviously a fence that prevents people from walking on the tracks. But they're building new housing as the train is just running down the track. You see all this new housing, all these new garages, all this new, and a lot of the housing looks like urban housing. They're all apartments, and
Mm,
they're
right.
using the same urban model for what they all
Mhm,
look like, you know. And I
right.
think that's a new urban look for apartments, and but they're building their own little um, place where they can park their cars, they can use their barbecue pits. It's enough. They're building a whole new world. They're building a whole new community within the city of Austin, within a community.
I know, but what I'm saying, that what I've noticed about Forest Hills, for example, is there are multiple residential buildings that were recently constructed there, which mean
Yes.
that people could get an apartment there and then walk down the sidewalk and get the train at Forest Hills and go to work.
Right. And for those who are close to the MBTA, and we have many that are now close to the commuter rail, it's going to be a lot easier. And the other thing, when I was in my house, I took out my phone and I downloaded the MBTA app, which allowed me to figure out what time the bus would be at the bottom of my street.
Yeah.
It tells you what time to leave your house because they've mapped out how long it would take you to come down the street and catch the bus. And so I said, okay, I was supposed to leave at a certain time, and I left them walking down the street. I came within so many feet of the bus as I'm walking, and I saw it just go right by. I had not made it to the bus stop. I was still coming down the
Oh
street.
my goodness, you missed it?
Right, so apparently, according to the calculations, I would have had to be walking at a certain speed, be able to make this bus. No sooner than I stepped off the sidewalk to go across the street where the bus sign was, the bus just went right by me in the way.
Oh my gosh.
And I went on my little app on my phone and it said the next bus will be 30 minutes and the one after that will be an hour. And Louise, my hands were cold. They were freezing. And so I made the intelligent, practical decision. I'm calling myself an Uber. I don't mind saving money on the bus, but today I am taking an Uber. And I enjoyed my ride going, and I enjoyed my ride to drop me off right at my house. I mean, everybody was Ubering today on my street, Louise. I see so many people being picked up and
Well,
taken.
I have to tell you, I took Uber from Hull one time,
Okay,
from Hull to our church,
okay,
which is about 16 miles each way.
okay.
So going one way from Hull to Dorchester, he was very pleasant and he charged me $72.
Wow,
Now
wow.
the ride is charging me $3.38 each way.
Isn't that fascinating?
It's
Isn't that
amazing.
isn't that so easy?
It is amazing. So I complained about the fact that it took me 3 weeks of calling the ride to
Yeah,
get myself registered as one of their customers.
yeah.
But I am so happy to say that I am a customer. I am accepted. They do pick me up. And I'm learning the things I have to say. A few things I forgot to say early. Now I'm saying them, and it makes a difference. And the amount of money that they're charging me is very practical, and I'm very pleased because I don't work anymore, so I don't earn any money anymore.
That is such a transition, to transition from receiving a check to no
Yeah,
longer receiving that check, and then making the adjustment for how you're going to how are you going to live? How are you going to
right,
eat? You know, I'm in preparation for that now because a lot of the clothes that I wear to the studio, I don't get dressed up like Pastor Hobbs does with a tie and a shirt and a suit. Why? Because those things have to go through dry cleaners, and prices have gone sky high. And so I wear dungarees. I wear warm flannel. I have dungarees that have an inner lining to them, so I feel warm. And I wear a warm shirt. And then what I do is I take the clothes and I wash them. I don't have to go to the cleaners and spend all of that money at the cleaners. And so we have to find practical ways of living when you don't have a check coming in the way that it used to come in.
right,
And
right,
I think you have to start, when you start doing it before you retire, so that you have your systems all set up. Because
right,
you don't want to wait until you retire and then find yourself in a panic.
right, exactly. I didn't know what it was going to be when I retired. I retired once and I was rehired back to do some work for the state
Yeah,
3 days later. And so I continued to work for the Commonwealth and
yeah,
ended up working for some amazing experiences like 9/11 and the shooting that was in Boston after the nice event that people were having. And there were so many things that I became involved in to help counsel people after those terrible things happened.
right.
And I never spoke about them at the time because it wasn't appropriate for me to speak about them at the time.
Sure, sure.
So, but in terms of thinking about how to support myself now, I did not know what it was going to cost me to live as a retiree.
Right.
And I think a lot of people listening to the broadcast are thinking to themselves, I don't know either, lady.
Yeah. Well, I think that when we find ourselves, for example, the what we're teaching on Sundays about people discovering their spiritual gifts. I think when you've learned something, it's important to share that with
Right.
others. And so, as it relates to you and I, you retired, me working around it, that I'm taking my time and trying to figure out what decisions I'm going to make regarding retirement. Because I said to somebody last night in a conversation, I said, I made the decision to leave 12th Baptist Church. That was a major decision in my life. Two, I made the second major decision, that was to leave the court at
Mm,
an early age, very early. And I said, the church is going to be my last, it's going to be my last decision. And
mm,
I want to make the right decision on my transitioning from the church. I don't want to, I was talking to somebody last night about a pastor who stood up in the pulpit, basically told his congregation that he was retiring without any plans at all for the church. He just had to, he just needed to make that announcement,
mm.
even though things were not ready. So,
Oh,
uh,
wow.
and
Wow.
it left the church in a very um, difficult set of circumstances, quite frankly. So I
Uh-huh.
would not want to do that for this church at all.
Well, I think you still have time because you're younger than I am. And I know that you have a few more years that you can plan on what you need to do for yourself while you're continuing to bring God to all of us.
Right. Well, and I think we have a great blessed team of pastors at the church, and
Mhm.
every pastor brings their own personality to how
Right,
they teach and what they teach. And in some churches, it's basically one pastor who dominates the pulpit, and it's that pastor's flavor and personality. But our church, I haven't taken over the pulpit like that, and I share the pulpit with other teachers, so that I'm sure that in our congregation that there are some people who like this pastor maybe over that pastor, and that's okay because their learning styles are different. And one of the pastors may have connected with that church member, with that church member's learning style. And so everybody can get fed and everybody can get attention because we have a diversity of
right.
pastors at our church. And
Well,
I find that to be exciting.
well, I am being cared for by God through the church. I managed to get transportation to get there. And recently I've been able to get there for the Bible study class at
Right,
8:30 in the morning with Pastor Greaves. And I have also recruited 3 church members to become board members of the prison reform organization that I am the president of.
right,
And they are doing a wonderful job going through all of the documents, reading all the letters from the prisoners who are writing to the church. And everybody who joins CURE does not have to be a Christian. They can be any kind of, they can have any kind of faith, and they can have no faith, but they
right.
can become involved with prison reform. And these 3 people that I recruited from our church are wonderful human beings.
Right.
It's a sister and 2 brothers. I am so proud of them. So proud of them.
Now, are you no longer meeting with them or being a part of CURE?
Oh, no, I'm definitely going to be meeting with them. What happened was they came to my house and they picked up all of the boxes of papers that I had, and they
Yeah,
brought them to a small office in the basement of the church. And they went through everything and they returned to me all of the information that didn't belong to prison reform. It belonged
right.
to mental health.
Okay.
Or something more personal for me. And they cleared it all and they brought it back to me. I was given everything actually last Sunday.
So that's like the presidents who brought important papers home or to their office and
Yes.
forgot about it. And now they're trying to retrieve all of that, all
Well,
those documents, right?
I didn't forget about these. These were all in the office in my home. And they decided to take them to the church so that they could have activity at the church and they wouldn't have to come to my home on a regular basis.
Yeah, that would be a struggle.
Yeah.
And the address for Boston Black News is my house.
Oh,
And so Barbara decided she wanted to change it to the church,
ah,
which is okay. It makes it easier for her to just pick it up at church and to come
right,
to my house.
right.
So so we have about it's 47, 48, 49, there were about 7 minutes left. So we started with talking about the Tyler Lawrence, the 13-year-old who was killed, and I was mentioning the memorial that's in front of our house where he was shot. And if I was the owner of the house, I asked myself the question, would I remove the flowers and everything that's been put in front of the house to remember the child, or would I leave it there? What would you do?
Wow, that's something. Well, I think that I would have a conference with the family of the child about where they wanted it, because once there is a funeral, the child might have a location that we could bring the flowers to.
Yeah.
That would be more appropriate.
Well, I've experienced over the years is that the city cleanup crew has gone to these sites of these memorials, scooped up everything, brought it to the home of the deceased family or friends, and dumped them in the front yard. And
Oh,
and when they did, that was done maybe 25 or 30 years ago. I made sure I went to the city officials to say how disillusioned I was with what they did.
right,
Uh,
right.
right.
Yeah,
And that's
it's not appropriate that as I said, I would start out with a conversation with the family. And
right.
then if the family wanted to retain those flowers, I would suggest that they be brought to wherever the child was buried.
Right.
That
Right.
would be an appropriate location where when people then go to pray for the child in the cemetery, they
Yeah.
would see the flowers and that would attract them to the location.
Nonetheless, those flowers were left there by another family who is going through the same thing that you're going through.
Right.
Right? Yes. And that could happen. Do you have any final words you want to share?
Well, I think that what we talked about today was very interesting. We talked about your preaching and teaching and my experience before I met you, since I met you. And we've talked about those things that have happened to young people on the street
Yeah.
that have been unacceptable to their families, but also to us.
Right.
And we want to pray for those people who have lost that 13-year-old, for example. That is,
Right.
to me, that is still a terrible, painful. I mean, I really feel the pain right here in my chest
Yeah.
of this child. And I just can't imagine, because I would have a great grandchild that age, and I would be heartbroken. So that's important that we talked about today.
Right.
So we'll be back next week and we'll talk about something else that has to do with our mental health and the mental health of those people listening to us.
Well, I look forward to being back, and thanks for letting me be your co-host, and we'll do this again on next week.
Great.